Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. Qin Mu coughed loudly, then laughed. Minor details obscure the main point, it's just minor details. Senior brother Rulai, I have yet to introduce you to everyone. This is my grandpa Ma, who people usually call Old Ma, and his seniority is twice higher than mine. This is Granny Sai, whose seniority is twice higher than mine as well, and the same goes for Grandpa Blind. Fellow Dao brothers, there's no need for formalities. Old Rulai chuckled and the dark clouds in the sky disappeared. Cult Master Qin, there's destiny between us. You received the Kakara staff, which was the staff that had accompanied me through the martial world. Since it landed in your hands, you and I had the destiny of becoming master and disciple. Old Monk had decided to head to Great Ruins for a fated meeting with the old Dao Friends of Disabled Elderly Village to take you under our great Thunderclap Monastery, so I didn't expect for our destiny to be broken just like that. When we met again, you had already become the Devil Cult Master of Heavenly Devil Cult. It just wasn't the time and destiny. Fate makes fools out of all of us. Qin Mu smiled slightly and said, Rulai is joking. Little brother has come forth this time to request Rulai to subdue a devil. In Granny Sai's body is a great expert, which is the previous cult master of my sacred cult, Li Qianxing. He has transformed into a devil seedling and planted himself in Granny Sai's Dao heart. Thus little brother is here to request Rulai to subdue this devil, ridding the world of a public hazard. A venerable said softly, Revered one of the world, this Granny Sai is the previous saintess of Heavenly Devil Cult, Sai Yuyu. On the night she married Li Qianxing, she murdered him. She's not a good person as well. She's a devil among the devils. All of the guardians and arhats said, these are the family matters of the devil cult, how could we interfere? Old Rulai raised his hand and smiled. All living things are equal, Buddhas are part of all living things, and devils are also part of all living things. Since Cult Master Qin has a request, Old Monk naturally should help. The gaze of the other venerable flickered as he said in a soft voice, when we give scriptures to people, we would accept some monetary offering. To help subdue the devil this time, could we? Old Rulai waved his hand to shut him up. Cult Mistress, can we see your true appearance? Qin Mu hesitated, then shook his head. Rulai, I don't think it's necessary, right? Blind knocked his bamboo cane against the ground and said, Old Rulai, there's no need to see Granny's true appearance. It won't be good if the cultivation of your monks got spoiled. Disputes regarding affections are ephemeral, and incomparably beautiful women are merely pink skeletons. Dao friend, you underestimate the cultivation of the monks of my great Thunderclap Monastery. Old Rulai smiled. It would be hard to lend a hand and enlighten Cult Master Li without seeing the true appearance of the cult mistress. For Cult Master Li, love stemmed from beauty, giving birth to the demon of temptation. Old Monk merely wants to take a look at this object of his love. Granny Sai giggled. Blind, Old Ma, why don't you undo my seal? Cult Master Qin, take off this ugly skin off my body. I want to see these hypocritical monks. Take a look at their determination. Blind frowned slightly and said in a low voice, Old Ma, what's your opinion? Old Ma hesitated for a moment, then looked at the monks that filled the mountain. Old Rulai's Buddhism far surpasses mine and should have this ability. Mua, what do you think? Qin Mu pondered and said, we'll just have to try even though it might not work. Grandpas, be on alert, we can't let Cult Master Li run away. Granny Sai chuckled. I've fought with this old bald donkey for countless years, so why would I run when there's such an interesting show here? I wouldn't run even if you chased me away. Old Ma sighed and took back the spirit Buddha's primordial spirit from the heart of Granny's brows as he nodded to Blind. Blind stretched out his hand, and a silver-colored vital chi that was like a dragon flew out from Granny Sai's body, returning to Blind. Qin Mu went forward and gave a gentle cut. Granny Sai's skin split open and a remarkably beautiful woman took a step out. Her hair was like a waterfall as she slowly raised her head up. Looking around with her bright eyes, she swept her gaze past the face of each and every monk. The golden peak fell completely silent. Even the Buddha voice that was chanting the Buddhist scriptures paused at that instant. All the eminent monks that had achieved Tao felt their throats go parched and their hearts throbbed violently while the prayer beads revolved quickly in their hands. Suddenly, the Buddha rays behind the head of one bodhisattva dispersed, and he dropped from the sky and fell into the valley below the clouds. After some time, the loud thump of a heavy object landing on the ground could be heard. Thump, thump. More heavy objects hit the ground, which was some of the Arhats and Vajras. The expression of old Rulai changed slightly, and he looked around in a hurry. All the monks had their eyes fixed on the body of that remarkably beautiful woman as the prayer beads in their hands revolved faster and faster. Tut! Old Rulai was about to shout out when he heard another voice. An Arhat shouted out angrily and rushed towards Granny Sai. This is a demoness that can bewitch all living things, a heavenly devil. From the first look at her, a devil spawned in my heart, so I definitely have to kill her. I shall kill this devil for the world. Another Vajra swung his devil-subduing pestle, showing his 3 heads and 6 arms as he rushed towards Granny Sai. Suddenly, an old monk pushed his way to the front to block the Arhat and Vajra. He tore his Buddhist robe off and pulled apart his prayer beads. He then laughed in a crazy manner. I'm used to arson and murder, never having cultivated the righteous fruit. I feel I've wasted the first half of my life eating vegetarian and reciting scriptures. After seeing such a beautiful woman, I'm certain I've wasted the first half of my life. But now, I'll be returning to the normal life. A few more Arhats rushed forward, and chaos broke out on the Golden Peak. The yellow robe of old Rulai trembled, and the Buddha voice of 1,000 Buddhas pagoda suddenly resonated, reciting thousands of Buddha scriptures at the same time to pull the monks fighting on the Golden Peak back to their senses. Everyone then sat down, deeply ashamed of themselves. Having to eat vegetarian and recite scriptures? What's the use of cultivating the righteous fruit? Isn't it better to enjoy without delay? I'm returning back to the normal life. Suddenly, an old monk leaped off the Golden Peak and disappeared into the distance. Silence filled the Golden Peak, so only the noise of the prayer beads revolving could be heard. Many Buddha rays behind the monks' heads had dispersed when they had fallen from the sky. Old Rulai looked around himself and saw the expressions of all the bodhisattvas, venerables, and arhats. Cult Master Li had used the beauty of Sai Yu to appear in front of all the monks, messing up their wisdom and damaging their Buddha's heart, spawning impure thoughts. Even Rulai had executed his dharma just then and activated the corporeal bodies of numerous Rulai in 1,000 Buddha's pagoda. He could only suppress the monks for a moment. When the Buddha rays behind their heads dispersed and they fell from the sky, it signaled that their Buddha's heart had been destroyed. Buddhism paid attention to the religious practice of the heart. Once their Buddha's heart was destroyed and their fruit of karma was tainted, their state of mind would crumble. The ones dropping down were no longer monks but were now ordinary people. When they dropped from the sky, they would drop from the place high above the mortal world into the mortal world. Some of them would change their minds, repent, and be saved, but some would just leave Great Thunderclap Monastery and enter the mortal world to struggle and break free. However, with a secular heart, it would be hard for them to do so. Sai Yoyo's beauty had made many of the higher-ups of Great Thunderclap Monastery fall, which was a great loss. However, the monastery couldn't blame Qin Mu and the rest. After all, they had already warned them, and it was old Rulai who insisted on wanting to see the true appearance of Granny Sai to test everyone's Buddha's heart. There were, of course, some Buddha's hearts that were stable and unmoved. These eminent monks were of different races, so even though Granny Sai was beautiful, they couldn't see it. Since they weren't human, they only saw her as mortal flesh. Your cultivation is not strong enough to be so attached to the appearance of the skin and not see the tat hotter. Old Rulai looked around himself and guided the monks. You saw her beauty and felt unable to restrain yourself, yet you don't know that the beauty you see is what you feel is beautiful and not true beauty. For example, Senior Brother Hai Kong, do you think she's beautiful? The person he mentioned was an eminent monk of a different race that had achieved Tao. He said, she and I are of different races and I can't see her beauty. Old Rulai smiled. When a different race can't see the beauty, then it isn't true beauty, just skin. Beauty is in great truth, great thinking, and great wisdom. Cult Master Li, this skin that you're infatuated with isn't true beauty to every living being. it only lies in the human word. This clearly shows how narrow-minded you are. All the monks seemed to be enlightened, and Qin Mu also felt that his words were very logical. As expected of old Rulai, a person who had demonstrated great thinking. He might just be able to subdue Li Qianxing, this heart devil. Why Li Qianxing wanted to become Granny Sai was because Granny Sai was extremely beautiful and messed up his Tao heart. This brought out his evil intentions and made him want to become Granny Sai. The old woman chuckled. Old Rulai, there are 10,000 paths in this world, but all my heavenly saint cult occupies is the human word. Your Buddhism speaks of 10,000 paths, but can you take possession of all of them? Say no more. What ability do you have to subdue me? Old Rulai smiled and took out a bronze mirror which passed to a venerable beside him. Pass it to him. The venerable took the mirror and walked down the high platform to come to Granny Sai. When he saw her appearance, his heart throbbed violently, and he immediately shut his eyes so he couldn't see. Granny Sai took the mirror into her hands and looked fondly at her reflection while giggling. Truly, a remarkably beautiful woman, I still pity her. Most of the monks saw her seductive appearance and found it hard to restrain themselves. Old Rulai smiled. Flip over the mirror. Granny Sai did as told and saw a white skeleton there. It was her appearance after she died. What does Cult Master Li think? Old Rulai smiled. Even if you're a remarkably beautiful woman, you'll be merely bones after your life ends. Do you think a skeleton is pretty? Granny Sai threw the bronze mirror onto the floor and crushed it under her feet while saying nonchalantly, this is merely a trick to fool the ordinary people, saying things like pink skeletons or whatever. Rulai, I know logic, but I don't want to be like you, living in splendor in your afterlife. It's enough if I live my current life to its fullest extent. Seeking for the afterlife is merely a cowardly behavior. Your little trick won't be able to subdue me. If you think a mirror is able to enlighten me, why don't I take a stroll around your great Thunderclap monastery to see if you will enlighten me first or if I'll enlighten all the young and old monks in your sect? Why don't you make a bet with me? Old Rulai frowned slightly and said, you have no wisdom. Blind also saw that things were turning bad and said, Tao brother, what wisdom, it's all nonsense, why don't we make a move on him directly and subdue him? Old Rulai muttered to himself for a moment, then said, Cult Master Li is the devil cult master, so I shall bring him into 1,000 Buddha's pagoda to subdue him. Monks, your determination is still shallow and your cultivations aren't there yet, all of you shall remain outside 1,000 Buddha's pagoda to aid. All of the monks acknowledged this and walked down the high platform to gather around 1,000 Buddha's pagoda. There were some monks that hurried out from inside, not daring to remain there. Old Rulai smiled. Cult Master Qin, you're also the devil cult master and have a deep devil nature. Since the ancient times, Buddhas and devils were always on separate sides, but since Cult Master is a guest who had come forth to seek help, I won't subdue you. However, during the time I'll be subduing Cult Master Li, I hope Cult Master will stay in Great Thunderclap Monastery to listen to the Dharma and resolve the evil tendencies in Cult Master's heart so you can make fewer sins in the future. Old Ma and Blind's hearts were like a clear mirror. Old Rulai was trying to make them stay in Great Thunderclap Monastery. If he could enlighten them, it would naturally be the best, but if he couldn't, he just wouldn't let them leave. Qin Mu was elated and smiled. Senior brother is wise. In that case, we'll have to trouble you. I hope senior brother can subdue Cult Master Li, this devil, as soon as possible. It'll be a huge merit. Old Rulai smiled and instructed, let these few benefactors stay in the monastery. A venerable hesitated. Revered one of the world, there are many places in the monastery that are the sacred grounds of our sect. If they barge into, let them be, there's nothing Great Thunderclap Monastery has to hide, said old Rulai. Imperial Preceptor came forward and I showed him Rulai's Mahayana Sutra, so could the evil heavenly devil Cult Master be worse than Imperial Preceptor? Cult Master Qin is also one of all living things, there are no outsiders in Great Thunderclap Monastery. That venerable acknowledged this and came over to lead everyone. Qin Mu smiled. This senior brother, does the monastery have vegetarian food? I've been eating too much greasy stuff during New Year's and would like to eat something light. The venerable took a look at him and revolved his prayer beads, suppressing the thoughts to subdue the devil. If Cult Master stays in Great Thunderclap Monastery, we can provide you with a lifetime of vegetarian's food. Qin Mu laughed out loud and said to Blind, they aren't afraid of us eating them poor. Blind snorted coldly and asked, Old Ma, do you think Rulai can subdue Li Qianxing? Old Ma hesitated. If one Rulai isn't enough, there are 1,000 of them in 1,000 Buddha's pagoda. They are all clear-natured existences that had seen the Tat Hotter, so it's highly possible. However, they have all passed on and Cult Master Li is extremely extraordinary. What I'm afraid now is that old Rulai will purposely not subdue Cult Master Li, but will trap Granny Sai in the pagoda. If she gets trapped there, we'll also be trapped here. The Venerable brought them to the guest rooms and said, Benefactors, feel free to stay here. The bookshelves have all the Buddhist scriptures, so feel free to browse through them. Qin Mu looked over and saw many scriptures as promised. Old Ma shook his head at him. The Buddhist scriptures here only have text and no divine arts, just browse through them. The Venerable said, Divine arts are no match for karma. Does Ma Wangshan not know? Old Ma said indifferently, without divine arts, how can one ward off karma? You Rulai's disciple? This means you're my junior brother. Your realm is too low, fall back, don't try to act clever in front of me. The Venerable was ashamed and embarrassed, so he turned to leave. Blind sat down calmly. I and Old Ma are already old, so it's fine if we stay here. But Mua, you're the cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult. If you get trapped here forever, won't you die of old age in this place? I'll find a chance to send you down the mountain. Qin Mu shook his head and said, We will wait until Granny Sai is well. Grandpa Blind, Grandpa Ma, since it's rare to come to Great Thunderclap Monastery, let us take a walk around. Old Ma revealed a smile. Didn't you want to see the 100 dragons' portraits for a long time? I shall bring you to the place where the reliefs are. Qin Mu was elated. The three of them walked out of the guest room to see an old monk sitting outside the door and reciting scriptures to the dragon Chelin. The fat monster had already fallen deep asleep and was snoring loudly. They even want to enlighten Fatty Dragon. Qin Mu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Monk, this fat ass needs to eat half a bucket of scarlet fire spirit pills every day. Can you feed him after you enlighten him? That old monk stopped his recital and gave him a glance. I can. Qin Mu was speechless. How rich? Continue. Old Ma then led the way, down a layer of clouds until they reached the middle of the mountain. Pointing forward, he said, That's the 100 dragons' portraits. Qin Mu looked over and saw numerous huge pillars. On each one, there was a relief of a heavenly dragon. Under the pillars, there were hundreds of monks that were observing the sculptures to comprehend their own path, skills, and divine arts from them. There was quite a number of monks that were trying out their divine arts, transforming their vital chi into forms of dragons that filled the sky. There were also Buddha rays shining brilliantly, which looked very extraordinary. Some monks were even exchanging blows, testing what they had just comprehended. A few old monks saw them coming over and immediately greeted Old Ma. Senior brother is here. Old Ma returned their greetings, not neglecting them. An old monk said with delight, Back then senior brother was in the limelight, and us here still remember senior brother's dashing appearance at that time. Qin Mu walked up in front of a dragon pillar to examine it in detail, exclaiming endlessly in admiration to himself. There were 100 forms of this heavenly dragon, and the stone carvings on this pillar had fully captured the posture of the majestic being. Old Ma was proficient in carving and the sculptures he did with wood were vivid, so he should have imitated the carvings here before. 100 dragons' portraits were indeed crucial to cultivating Thunderclap 8 strikes, but what was even more important was still Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. Without it, it was hard to cultivate Thunderclap 8 strikes to its maximum. However, Qin Mu had already comprehended unity technique and his attainments in Thunderclap 8 strikes weren't any weaker than if he had been cultivating Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. At this moment, he suddenly heard a voice aimed at him. The one that herds cows. Qin Mu turned his head back and saw a monk in white looking at him in astonishment. This monk looked slightly familiar, and Qin Mu suddenly realized who he was. So it's little monk Ming Xin. We've met before in Great Ruins Grandma Temple. The little monk was a student of old monk Qin Mu who had brought him to find old Ma and used the Kakara staff as a bet. Mingxin was defeated by Qin Mu and thus the Kakara staff had landed into Qin Mu's hands, though he then gave it away to the devil ape. Monk Mingxin walked over with quick steps. He had grown quite a bit and was now slightly taller than Qin Mu. Puberty had only started for Qin Mu in the last half a year, so he'd had a spurt in growth, but it wasn't enough yet. Monk Mingxin took a look at him and was eager to give a second try at a battle with him. We haven't met for a few years and I wonder if your skills improved. Qin Mu sighed ruefully. They have. Since I defeated you, times changed and I improved by leaps and bounds. When Qin Mu saw a familiar person, he couldn't help feeling affable. Since he was young, he had always mingled around with blind and cripple. From the moment he could remember things, he was always learning all kinds of knowledge from the 9 elders of disabled elderly village. It could be said that he didn't have any playmates during his childhood days, which made them dull and dry. Even though he had only fought one match with Monk Mingxin, they were of the same age, so it was natural to feel affable upon meeting him again. Monk Mingxin recited one of the many names of Buddha to suppress his own angry thoughts and smiled. You defeated me back then, but you might not defeat me today. After losing to you, I had pondered about the painful experience and fixed my weakness. Why don't you have another battle? You changed the sutra? Qin Mu asked in astonishment. Pleased, Monk Ming said, I was defeated when you struck my throat the previous time, so I will definitely not let you have your way this time. Qin Mu cried out, Monk Mingxin, how old are you? How could you change Rulai's Mahayana Sutra as you like? With your current horizons and knowledge, the more you change it, the more mistakes and flaws would take shape. Rather than carelessly changing it, wouldn't it have been better to ask Rulai and let Rulai teach you? I also carelessly changed my technique and to the point it's beyond recognition, so I can't really say anything to you. Qin Mu blushed with shame. He had also changed his technique, an Overlord Body 3 elixir technique had been changed more than once. Great educational heavenly devil scriptures was even fused with his it, solving the flaw on the left shoulder. Him saying something to Monk Mingxin about carelessly changing his technique was like the pot calling the kettle black. Maybe the other had indeed erased the flaw on his throat. Monk Mingxin began to stir and said, in that case, could you condescend to teach? Qin Mu was about to say something when an old monk said, Disciple, don't be impudent, this is Cult Master Qin of Heavenly Devil Cult. Monk Mingxin jumped in shock and cried out, when have you become the old devil of Heavenly Devil Cult? Qin Mu sighed. This is hard to explain. I didn't want to do it, but got pushed onto the seat of the cult master without the choice to refuse. He looked toward the old monk and recognized him as old monk Jing Ming. This old monk was Mingxin's master, and his personality was very much like his name, very shrewd. He had pointed out that Qin Mu was the devil cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult not to notify Mingxin, but to tell all the monks that were present. With a shout in his loud voice, all the monks that were studying 100 Dragons portraits looked towards Qin Mu and recited the many names of Buddha under their breath. It was evident that they all couldn't restrain themselves and suppressed their thoughts of wanting to subdue the devil. Monk Mingxin immediately said, in that case, you should quickly withdraw and not be the devil cult master anymore, since you're going to die. There are many eminent monks who hate evil with a passion and are used to killing devils. Every time they go out, they subdue a few devils to accumulate merit and you will be killed. I shan't compete with you, you should quickly flee down the mountain. Qin Mu shook his head. Thank for your kind intentions, but I'm now a guest. Old Rulai is my senior brother and he said I should be allowed to stay in the monastery. In this case, would they still subdue the devil? Mingxin hesitated for a moment, then said, this I can't say for sure. They will most likely debate with you, advising you to turn over a new leaf. If they can't talk you into it, they will most likely beat you to death. Qin Mu was speechless. He indeed saw a few monks walking over to him. Amitabha. A monk placed his palms together and raised a difficult question first. Devil, do you dare to debate with me? Qin Mu asked, have you been completely indifferent to worldly temptations? That monk was slightly shaken. Not yet. Then what's the debate for? Qin Mu broke out into laughter. You haven't even achieved your Tao. A half-baked, fake monk like you has only the ability to flaunt misunderstandings from gossip. Fall back. That monk was tongue-tied, and another monk beside him immediately said, Devil, I shall talk to you about truth, compassion, and beauty. Qin Mu asked, You Rulai? That monk's complexion turned beet red, and he replied, I'm still not Rulai. Then you haven't achieved the word truth. Qin Mu smiled. Rulai is the true state of things, receiving and achieving the word truth. If you aren't the truth yourself, how can you want to talk about truth, compassion, and beauty? Fall back, don't embarrass yourself, we will talk when you achieve that height. Don't take what you can't do and force it on me. If you want people to do as you say, you have to set an example. The monk was left speechless, and another one stretched out his hand out. Golden springs poured out from the earth, and a lotus bloomed. Buddhism has Anattara Sambodhi, the highest perfect awakening, the supreme perfect wisdom. Qin Mu asked, Have you achieved supreme perfect wisdom? Fall back. Another monk laughed loudly. Devil Cult Master is an eloquent and fluent speaker. Since you won't respond if I talk to you about scriptures, I shall talk to you about the secular world. Excited, Qin Mu came over to that monk and said, Great monk, don't speak first. Let me ask you, if everyone converted to Buddhism, didn't reproduce, didn't marry, had no children, wouldn't the human race be extinct 100 years later? What grudge do the humans have with you? Why do you want to eradicate the human race? The monk was stunned for a time, then said, What I want to talk to you about is that your heavenly devil cult does too much evil, and the magic in your cult is evil and sinister. It uses live people to cultivate. The monk stared at him with wide eyes, barely holding back his anger. This is different from what I want to debate with you. In that case, let us talk about this. When I met a hall master of heavenly saint cult who used infants to cultivate, he was slain. Just now, I saw a monastery raising strange beasts at the foot of Mount Meru by mixing anesthetics with bloody meat to lie to the people. Where did the meat come from? Did they take the lives of living creatures? I dealt with the scum in my cult, it's your turn now. Go eradicate that monastery and kill all those monks. The monk was furious. This is different from what I'm debating with you. I'm going to talk about the teachings with you. Our great Thunderclap Monastery has tens of thousands of Buddhist scriptures, each and every one of them is passed down from generation to generation, teaching people to be compassionate. Qin Mu said in astonishment, If your own Buddhism hides dirt to conceal corruption instead of cleaning it up, and the monks in the monasteries aren't compassionate, how can you teach people to be compassionate? The foolish like to lecture others, but they can't do it. Oh well, did you say teachings? I'll talk to you about teachings. The path of the saint is none other than the one that can be used by common people. Can your dharma be used by common people every day? If they can't use it, what's the point of just having it recorded in a book? If it's useless, won't it be better to just burn it? You devil! The monk was really furious now and wanted to pounce over. Preposterous arguments and harmful teachings, burning scriptures and eradicating Buddha, your devil nature is indeed very serious. I'll fight it out with you. Hold it. Qin Mu raised his hand and smiled. You want to kill me, but let me ask you, do the Buddhist scriptures allow you to take the life of a living creature? The monk stopped in his tracks and suppressed his anger. Buddhist scriptures advise people to be compassionate, to not take the life of a living creature. However, against devils, even Buddha will be angered and subdue them. Qin Mu asked, Grass, is it life? Naturally, the monk said angrily. Seedlings grow from grass and many of them turn into grains, which means that grains are also lives, so why do you eat them? You have been eating vegetarian and praying to Buddha, thinking about compassion, thinking about beauty, thinking about truth, but you don't even know how many lives were lost in a mouthful of your food. Qin Mu said. The older you get, the more lives you have eaten. What face do you have to talk about Buddha's heart, to talk about compassion? He took out a flower seed from his Dao Tai sack and held it in his hand. When he executed Earth Eon creation technique, a soft shoot sprouted from the flower seedling and grew. Its roots broke out from their shell, and a spirit grass rose up in his hand. The plant was delicate, and a flower bud soon sprouted. It trembled gently, and a tender and lovely flower bloomed. "Is it beautiful?" Qin Mu asked. The monk was slightly infatuated and nodded in agreement. "Beautiful." Qin Mu brought the flower to the monk and said, "This flower is the grains you eat, they are its fruits. They are a beautiful life, yet how many of them have you eaten? When are you going to pay them back? If they had spirit and cultivated into a demon, would they cry about how you ate millions and millions of their race? Do you ever think about the damned souls of countless flowers and grasses surrounding you, waiting for you to pay with your life day and night?" The monk held the beautiful flower in both of his hands as his expression became more and more defeated. He felt the beauty of the tender flower becoming sinister and terrifying, demanding his life. Suddenly, the monk sat down in a lotus position with tears rolling down his face. "I've eaten countless people from your race and my grave sins are hard to resolve. I'm willing to turn into a pile of ashes to nourish you." When he was finished with his words, the fire of karma lit up around his body and burned him cleanly in an instant. But even though the fire burned him completely, it didn't harm the beautiful flower in the slightest. It landed softly onto the ashes, still tender and lovely. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Cultivating Buddhism still comes to naught at the end, only good enough to be used as fertilizer. Qin Mu bent over and gathered the ashes together to plant the flower seedling. "Monk, you have been useless all your life, but you are finally useful after you died. This flower will grow well, and it will bear many seedlings which will grow into even more flowers. You will be gratified if you know this in the netherworld. Even though the flower isn't the common people, but by using your ashes as fertilizer, you have indeed achieved that goal of the everyday use of common people. Excellent, you and I are of the same path." He stood up and looked around. Even though he was a youth, he had the air of a cult master about him as he said unhurriedly, "Which great monk still wants to debate with me?" The surroundings were silent. Qin Mu looked at the serious and solemn monks, but the other side immediately avoided his eyes, not daring to meet them. Old Ma and Blind had been standing far away, chatting with some old monks. When they saw what happened, Blind smiled. "If Mua remains in Great Thunderclap Monastery and the monks don't immediately make a move to slay him, with just a few days' time, half of the monks in Great Thunderclap Monastery will return to the normal life, a small half will be possessed by the devil, while those who won't will all be fake monks. He's really even more powerful than Granny Sai." Suddenly, a monk shouted sternly, "He's the devil! He's a heavenly devil!" bewitching everyone with his demonic words. Another monk shouted out right after, "He used demonic words to kill senior brother Shin Kong. We can't let this devil live, kill him to get rid of the devil." In an instant, everyone was furious and shouted out their wish to subdue Qin Mu and kill the devil. At that moment, the youth started laughing with merriment, his voice growing louder and louder. The commotion around him gradually vanished, but his laughter still continued on. Once laughing subsided, Qin Mu said coldly, "You guys wanted to debate, so I debated with you. When you wanted to pull in the sect's teachings, I agreed to talk about the teachings. When you couldn't win against me, you guys talked about taking the life of a living creature. Fine with me, let's talk about taking the life of a living creature. When you couldn't succeed even in that, you guys actually want to kill me. What's the use of you cultivating Buddhism? Fall back, return to your normal life." Some monks were at a loss and their hearts became empty. After a moment, some actually sighed and really turned away and went to pack their luggage to leave the mountain. The rest of the monks didn't fall back but stood with unpleasant expressions. Qin Mu shook his head and smiled. "So it still comes to fighting in the end? If that's how it is, why flaunt your inadequate knowledge first?" With a roused spirit, he looked around, and his eyes flashed like lightning. "Who's coming to die?" This video will end here.